I was thinking about, the time I've been away and now, getting ready to come back, and here, this is the day, to come back and to preach and to stand here. So I'm getting a little good, feeling here about that, and so I thought I would talk about sex. Yeah, really. Many years ago, for some odd reason, I was appointed by a bishop to go back to my hometown, Spring Valley, New York, in the middle of Rockland County, on one side of the Hudson River. Well, my son and his wife and children live on the other side in Westchester County. Now they say no prophet is welcome in their own hometown. Can anything good come out of Spring Valley? Well, when I arrived at that little church, it was really unique. My first grade teacher was in that church. My third grade teacher was in that church. And my eighth grade algebra teacher was in that church. And my scoutmaster was in that church. All at once. I suppose that's just the way it is. You grow up and people saw you as a little kid, and then you are now not a little kid, and they see you as an adult. They might have some difficulty adjusting to all that, and they did, and I did with them. I grew up in the town, but I was a Roman Catholic until I was about 20. So, other than the Scouts, I never really went into that church that I was now going to be the minister. It was just a real hoot. I was pretty excited, I went there because I knew the streets, I knew the houses, I knew the schools, I knew a lot of people there, which is understandable, I suppose. I was about 27 years old. And I don't mind saying, I was a real activist back in the day, and I made it clear to them that I was. My teachers were astonished. This little child that they taught was now their minister. And I remember very vividly, my third grade teacher was named Mrs. Coleman, Mrs. Juanita Coleman. And I was her pet in the third grade. And she would always go around the church begging the members of the church, don't hurt him, don't criticize him, whatever. Well, what I didn't realize was how conservative an element there was in the church. And I don't know how they were going to relate to my passion for social justice. But it goes without saying, I learned pretty quickly. So one day I'm marching right down Main Street for a pro-choice rally. And I was proud to do that because I'm used to protesting and marching. I'm used to doing all that, getting involved. And what I didn't realize was that in the barber shop was my algebra teacher, Mr. Hake. And he was getting his hair cut. And he would get that Marine style, very conservative. And, well, he saw me marching. And there's no doubt about it, he was disappointed and angry that I was marching with that group. He was the treasurer of the church, and his wife and he were prominent people, good givers. And their cold, hard cash, they made it clear, as well as their volunteering aspects, really supported the church. No doubt about it. Well, wouldn't you know, I got a call from Mr. Hake that evening. He said he'd like to meet with me in my office at 9 a.m. the next morning. Now, remember, I was in his class, and now he is asking me to meet in my office. I thought that roles had reversed. The next morning, right on time, Mr. Hake came into the office. He dumped the finance books all on my desk. And he said, I saw you marching, and his eyes were piercing with anger. He gave me no warning, no explanation. Why was he dumping all the books on the desk? Well, I remember Mr. Hake used to be like that when I was in 8th grade. So I gave him some latitude. And I let him go on a little bit about why he might want to resign as the church treasurer, as well as resigning as a member of the church. And he sat down and he loosened his tie and he said, it's as simple as this. If you keep preaching about these liberal issues, I can't worship here anymore. And I can't be a member here anymore. Really? And then he said something that made my hair stand up on the back of my neck. It's, if you keep bringing up those people, he didn't say people, he used the N-word. I'm not coming here anymore, and neither is my wife. So, I don't know if you've noticed since you met me, I have this one unique quality. I know how to make people feel very uncomfortable. I do. Through really not doing very much. Just by pausing. So here I am. And there he is. And here I am. I felt actually sorry for him because he didn't know what I was really doing, but I knew what I was doing. And I just let him go a little bit. I mean, he was getting more nervous because I wasn't answering him. And then I began. And I said, Mr. Hake, Ted, call me Ted. Okay. Ted, if you left the church, you would hurt me. If you left the church, you'd hurt a lot of people in this church because they love you and you love them. If you left the church, you would hurt you. And you'd miss these people who've been your church family all these years. But let me assure you without equivocation, that would be a choice that you alone would have to make. Nobody else will make it for you. And after all, we all make choices. Well, then we eyeballed each other. And he got up. I never saw Mr. or Mrs. Hake ever again. In my whole life, I never heard from them again. But the church went on. And the church prospered. And new people came, but not them. Now, I'd like to ask you something. What's the most important choice in your life that you had to make alone? That's a hard question to answer, isn't it? Anybody here know what's the most important choice you had to make? Don't say you're coming here to church today. I mean, that's too easy. Any choice that you'd like to bring up? None of you made any choices ever. Having a child. Excellent. Choosing a college major. Oh, there's a lot here, huh? I mean, yes? Moving away from an addiction. That's a choice. Okay. Wow, these are great. Before you got here this morning, at least I know that before I got here this morning, there's a lot of choices that had to be made. Let's see. Should I lay my clothes out first and then shower, or should I shower and what about when shaving? Let's see. Where's my towel? And should I pack my car and there's all kinds of things to decide. Should I go to Dunkin' Donuts for coffee, or should I go up the road to get a bagel? I mean, these are small things, but choices nonetheless. Choices. We all make choices in our lives. Choices that we make in our subconscious. We don't even know we're making those choices. Maybe that's why I have such admiration for Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. He knew that principles and ethics and morals dictated for us our choices, and we'd have to make them if we wanted to live in a better society. It's just that simple. Oh, I know there's strength in numbers, but sometimes you have to stand up, even if you stand alone. Now, I've been told by people with more brains than I have that our society is unraveling, and the reasons are many. The single greatest force at work, break the bindings which make us human and preserve the soul, is sexual dysfunction. Now, we don't like to use the word sexual. Despite a steady drumbeat of Puritan criticism, we consume more pornography and indulge in more narcissistic, erotic behavior than any culture on the face of the earth. That's a fact. We hate sex. We love sex. We are afraid of it. We are desperately attracted to it. We claim to be shocked by what other people are doing, but we pay them to tell us about it. What did you do? We campaign against depravity to prove our decency. And then we descend into the pit of sexual compulsion at the risk of losing everything that we say is important to us. The career, our family, basic human trust. Remember that song? I don't know the words, but you know the tune. Let's talk about sex, baby. No? Nobody remember that song? You remember that? I don't know how it goes. You know how it goes? Wow. I mean, oh, wow. Well, just the song alone gets you. Like my children were singing it. What are you saying? What are you talking about? Let's not talk about that. Why not? Well, I don't know why not. I just don't want to do that. I mean, all of a sudden, they knew that was a hot button issue. Sex compels us and makes us queasy. We can't decide whether it's some sort of unfortunate biological lag pulling us in the direction of animals or a sacred delirium to be joined with the Spirit in ways that make us human, fully human. As the world's oldest commodity, it's also the world's most effectively mass-produced cause of anxiety and paranoia. About nothing else on earth is the grass always greener on the other side of the fence. We live for illusions at the expense of possibilities. These days, it's like American politics is driven by differing views on human sexuality. The hot-button issues are sexual in nature. And the way to win the election is not to ask people to vote for you, but persuade them not to vote for the morally inferior opponent. It's called the politics of allegations, and its bread and butter is sexual gossip. Oh, yes, it is. Watch some more sexual insecurity, which has been fueling persecution in America since the Salem witch trials, has now turned the attention to new enemies. Homophobia can be driven by secret fears. The anxious one in the midst of all of them might himself be gay. Much anti-abortion fervor is driven by an unarticulated desire to make poor women suffer for their promiscuity. And the fear of sex education in schools is grounded in the notion that honest information about sexuality is an incentive to sexual misconduct. The truth is, nothing encourages destructive sexual behavior so much as righteous denial, ritual, secrecy, and institutional fear. Even in the Bible, the book, this issue is debated. People have to make a choice about where they come down. One person said, I wouldn't have lusted so much if somebody had not said in a loud voice, "Thou shalt not lust." Oh, I don't know if there's any medicine and what could cure all this. It'd be grounded in a healthier, more natural view of this powerful human instinct. And we all have it. There was a great political man who he was on Zoom and he was on television, and and they were discussing something of national importance. Well, turns out he thought his camera was off after the interview. Maybe you heard this story, and he started to masturbate right there. And people said, "It's outrageous! Oh my gosh, how could he? It was terrible. That was." Well, now, just a minute. How many people do that? Almost everybody, yeah. And how many people, think they're doing it in the privacy of their own home? Now, I'm not telling you to be careful about the Zooms you go on. I'm not. I'm just saying, if families are to be stitched back together again, it's going to have to begin with confessing. Nowhere do we sow the seeds of a healthy or unhealthy sexuality with more fertility than at home. Nowhere do we teach the wrong lessons more powerfully than when parents fail to show their children physical attraction and affection are natural attributes of humanity. Mysterious and dangerous, too important to ignore, too wonderful to deny, too sublime to keep hidden away. I mean, the home is the temple of Eros. And it is there that children first experience physical attraction and affection as sacred or profane. When children see their parents embrace, love itself gets bolted down to the soul. When parents hold hands, children see tenderness in actions. When there is an embrace in the kitchen, I remember this as if it were yesterday. Then the private passion of the bedroom is validated rather than divorced from real life. Mothers and fathers who kiss in front of their children, they might hear, yuck. But what they hear, really, if they listen closely, is, What's more, when the parents live out their respect for several boundaries, they establish those boundaries in their children. And when they are affectionate within the covenant of marriage, they pass along the sexual importance of the covenant through their children. Oh, there's a lot of opinions out there on what constitutes holy. But I'm more and more attracted to the notion that the truly sacred is found in the space between. And Quakers say that very much so. The divine spark of a higher being within each soul. That's why we're not Quakers. Unitarian Universalists believe that's the spark between the two souls. Well, I don't know who's right or wrong. I don't know if Sigmund Freud is right in his Oedipus complex. But any parent knows that when an infant crawls into a parental bed, he or she will crawl into that spot between mom and dad. And what constitutes an almost instinctive form of communal heritage, or she puts themselves between their parents, as if to be charged by that energy which must now pass through them. And I remember those days. I do. I remember them as if they were yesterday. Maybe it was a nightmare. Who knows what the reason is. They jump into our bed, and my sons would often push me away. Not so much to replace me, but to practice being me. And I thought about that every time that occurred. And that's why I think it's so important that simple and sacramental life be a demonstration of affection. A religious view of life is by nature a sensuous one, not to consume for the sake of pleasure, but what you embrace for the sake of delight. To compliment and to caress are the true signs of romance. And they teach by example a life of consideration. I have been both turned on and turned off by people who decide what level they're going to show other people their affections toward each other. I mean, one couple I know would not even hold hands together in public. And another couple would be so attached, you'd have to get a crowbar to separate them. They were just that intimate, you know. I've seen many homes where there's no physical intimacy. Well, you show me a home like that, and I've seen a lot. Then I'll show you a home that's really an affectation. Show me a home where parents hold hands and they hold their hearts together. I'll show you a little romance and training to children who will find it harder to separate sex and love when it's their turn to run the temple. The theory once was never fight in front of your children and never kiss in front of them either. The result, a whole generation assumed that the passion in all of its form was to be feared and hidden, and that romance is preceded by marriage, but it never sustains it. Oh, one choice I'm sure all people would like to make is more simple and meaningful life. To choose to want that, and a whole other thing when the choice falls on your head. Like, I didn't choose who I am. Never. I didn't choose at all what my preferences would be. I made many choices that proved to be wrong. Yes, I did. And as a response to who I really was and what was acceptable in society. I mean, if you were me and you knew what your sexuality was and you wanted to succeed, you were doomed if you were to ever be honest with anyone else and yourself. That's a fact. My guess is that many people have done the same thing that I've done. You remember President Ronald Reagan and his wife Nancy? Remember them? Well, I used to really be very judgmental. They're so like intimate with each other, and they don't even want anybody else around them, and she was always very protective of him. And then I looked at that a little closer, and wait a minute, that's not bad at all. That's really great. They had a relationship that they didn't care who else saw it, and they weren't ready to let anybody into it. In fact, he was so overjoyed. This is what he did. When Nancy Reagan had a birthday, he would send 3 dozen roses to her mother. And in a note, a handwritten note, said, "Thank you for giving birth to Nancy." I mean, it's a fact that he did that. And gee whiz, wouldn't you like to be loved like that? I mean, to have somebody that was just your special somebody. You know, people talk about, well, let's talk about open marriage or an open partnership or a threesome or a troublesome, or I don't even know what they call them anymore. You know, like, would you like to do that? No, I wouldn't like to do that. I mean, the idea is if you're meant to be with each other and you want to be with each other, you don't have to make excuses about any other person in your being, because that's all that matters to you. You don't have to fight to have monogamy. It could just be there. I think it takes courage and grit to come to terms with what choices that you make in your life, what choices that are now available to you, how you live, how you face your own truth. You know, people say, I need to spice up my marriage. Really? Yeah, I mean, it's dull. We're just, going through the motions. Well, since I have had considerable experience in the area of attempting to be loved and loving, since I long believed myself to be a hopeless romantic, allow me to offer some advice to anyone who has issues with romance, if you will. Let your children see you embrace. Let other people see you embrace. Let your children see you kiss. Let them overhear you teasing. Let your children hear your gentle rebukes of each other. And let your children observe you. Domestic courtship reinforces the notion that people are together because they want to be together, not because it's a practical, decent thing to do. We have really hurt society with our Puritan ethics. It really is a detriment to society because we're so busy trying to live up to it, we don't realize why we're doing that. Well, perhaps the trouble we're trying to turn the best thing in life to some sort of investment strategy, where everything is weighed and measured. Actions are considered worthwhile if they get us something. Romance is just a prelude to seduction. And simple acts of kindness like flowers and Hallmark cards. Don't you love that? Flowers and Hallmark. Don't you love that? It's great. They're used to cover your mistakes or make apologies. How many people here have run to the florist because they've got to make up somewhere? Genuine romance, on the other hand, is sufficient to itself. And it doesn't need to be part of some larger self-serving strategy. If you are a hopeless romantic like I am, then you'll certainly agree when I say the following. The fact is, all impractical gestures of affection are grounded in the belief that no one ever outgrows the need to be surprised by signs of their worth in the eyes of other people, the person that you've given your life to. And these signs need not be lavish. You don't have to spend a lot of money like it's going out of style to impress somebody. You can cut some flowers even in a vacant lot out of a garden and arrange them on the dinner table. You can take an interest in what colors are pleasing to the one that you love. And remember them when you buy a gift. Take time to listen. Telephone for no reason. You remember? We just heard Stevie Wonder's song. Remember Stevie Wonder's song? I just called to say I love you. Remember that? Don't I sing lousy? Don't I sing lousy? But you got the idea. Express to that other person that they matter. Compliment some physical feature that attracts you, even if you've done it before, and even if you've done it many times before. You can't stop your children. The honesty of children. We know that lots of females ask husbands, how does this look? Does this make me look fat? No, dear. And then the kid in the next room, but Mommy, you've always looked fat. Buy something you know they'll like, regardless of whether you like it. Take over chores that's not yours. And give the gift of a few hours of peace and quiet. When you have a little extra money, don't always do the practical thing. I asked one man, what did you get your wife on your anniversary? He said, I got 4 new tires for the car. What? Last year I got a septic system in the backyard because it's something we could use. Well, once in a while, you got to... a man has to take a woman out shopping for a dress and then make sure that she has an occasion to wear it. And every couple, married or otherwise, should schedule time away from family, away from work, and the pressures of social life to rediscover what attracted them in the first place. Don't worry about your children. They're the ones who's going to benefit from having parents who are in love with each other. And remember, don't give up on dancing. Just because you're not sure how you look when you dance. Movement and touch are symptoms of love, just as a lack of them are signs that the souls are drifting apart. Coffee together in the morning. Walk together in the evening. These are important components in the pursuit of intimacy. Couples are always worrying about what they should do, forgetting about what matters most is what they should do as long as they're doing it together. And in conclusion, my friends, always remember that relationships are a pilgrimage, and they unfold with an equal measure of challenge and possibility. They cannot survive the loss of intimacy or the loss of consideration. When you think about it, saving the last dance for someone you love isn't just a quaint remnant of an old-fashioned hospitality. For you, and I know for me, it may just be the best hope you have of dancing again. Amen.